The rhythmic creak of a swing set, a sound synonymous with childhood innocence, usually defines the afternoons in this Cleveland, Ohio neighborhood. But on March 2nd, 2026, that sound was drowned out by the heavy, clinical silence of a forensic team. Just yards from the bright plastic slides of a local playground, in a neglected patch of frozen dirt, investigators unearthed a nightmare. 2 suitcases, partially buried and discarded like unwanted trash, held the remains of 10-year-old Amor Wilson and her 8-year-old sister, Mila Chatman. As the neighborhood watched in a state of paralyzing shock, the trail led back to a nearby residence, and a guardian whose shadow hid a secret far darker than the shallow graves. The true enigma wasn't just the violence, it was the haunting sight of the one child who had been spared. Your likes and comments help promote our videos, and please subscribe to Crime Queen if you appreciate high-quality true crime videos. Thank you. On March 2nd, 2026, the Cleveland Police Department responded to a report that effectively paralyzed the city's east side. The focus of the dispatch was a vacant lot located in a residential sector of Cleveland, Ohio. This specific plot of land was situated in immediate proximity to a local playground, a juxtaposition that would define the grim nature of the discovery. Upon arrival, law enforcement officers identified a disturbed area of earth where the edges of consumer luggage were visible above the soil line. This was not a case of abandoned property, it was the site of a double interment. The physical evidence at the scene consisted of 2 suitcases. These containers had been used to conceal the bodies of 2 young girls and were placed into shallow graves. The burial was incomplete, with the suitcases only partially covered by the earth, suggesting a hurried or amateur attempt at concealment. Forensic teams established a wide perimeter around the vacant lot to preserve any potential biological or trace evidence. The recovery process was methodical, as technicians worked to extract the luggage from the dirt without compromising the remains inside. Inside the suitcases, investigators confirmed the presence of 10-year-old Amor Wilson and her 8-year-old sister, Mila Chatman. The girls were half-sisters. The identification process was conducted with the assistance of the Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's Office, which took custody of the remains for formal autopsy. The discovery site, a vacant lot used by the community, became the primary focal point of a massive criminal investigation. The fact that the remains were located so close to a playground added a layer of logistical complexity to the scene, as officers had to manage both the forensic recovery and a growing crowd of concerned residents. While the forensic recovery was underway at the lot, the Cleveland Police Department initiated a secondary track of the investigation to identify the individual responsible for the disposal. The trail led directly to a nearby residence and 28-year-old Aaliyah Henderson. Henderson was taken into custody shortly after the bodies were located on March 2nd. The evidence at the vacant lot, including the type of suitcases and the nature of the burial, provided the initial basis for her detention. The legal status of the case was established quickly following the arrest. Aaliyah Henderson has been officially charged with aggravated murder. In the state of Ohio, this specific charge is reserved for homicides that involve prior calculation and design, indicating that the state believes the deaths of Amor Wilson and Mila Chatman were not the result of a sudden impulse, but a premeditated act. The use of suitcases as makeshift coffins and the attempt to bury them in a vacant lot are key components of the evidence currently being processed by the prosecutor's office. The discovery of Amor and Mila also triggered a welfare check at Aaliyah Henderson's residence. During the execution of a search warrant at that location, police discovered another child. This child was found unharmed and was removed from the home by Child Protective Services. The presence of a healthy, surviving child in the same home where 2 others were allegedly murdered and then discarded in suitcases is a factual detail that has become central to the investigative narrative. The vacant lot near the playground remained cordoned off for an extended period as investigators looked for additional evidence, such as the tools used to dig the shallow graves or any clothing and personal items belonging to the victims. Every element of the luggage in the lot discovery, from the March 2nd date to the specific ages of the victims, was cataloged to build a timeline of the sisters' final movements. The investigation continues to focus on the logistics of how Amor Wilson and Mila Chatman were moved from the residence to the lot, and the specific circumstances that led to the aggravated murder charges against their guardian. Amor Wilson was 10 years old at the time of her death in early 2026. In the developmental landscape of a child, 10 is a significant marker, representing the transition from the early elementary years into the threshold of pre-adolescence. For a girl in Cleveland, Ohio, this age typically involves a specific social and educational routine, attending the 5th grade, developing independent interests, and, in Amor's case, assuming the role of the eldest sibling within the household. Her life was defined by the geography of her neighborhood and the internal dynamics of the residence she shared with 28-year-old Aaliyah Henderson. Amor's younger half-sister, Mila Chatman, was 8 years old. The 2-year age gap between the sisters created a specific bond common in multi-child households, where the older child often serves as a primary social navigator for the younger. At 8, Mila was likely in the 3rd grade, an age characterized by increasing curiosity and a reliance on the structure provided by both school and home. The sisters were documented as being part of the same domestic unit, sharing a living space that would eventually become the focal point of a forensic investigation. The relationship between Amor and Mila was not just one of shared blood, but of shared proximity. As half-sisters, they navigated a blended family structure under the guardianship of Henderson. In an urban environment like Cleveland, the bond between siblings of these ages often manifests in shared activities, walking to local stores, spending time at the nearby playground, and looking out for one another in public spaces. Amor, as the 10-year-old, occupied a position of perceived maturity, a child who was beginning to understand the responsibilities of the big sister role. The household at the center of this case was not limited to Amor and Mila. Police reports from the search of the residence on March 2, 2026, confirmed that at least one other child lived in the home. This child, who was found unharmed by investigators, provides a factual anchor for the domestic environment. The presence of this third child suggests a household that was active and multi-generational, with Aaliyah Henderson serving as the 28-year-old head of the residence. The fact that the victims were 10 and 8 indicates they were at ages where they were highly visible within their community, making their sudden disappearance and subsequent discovery a jarring rupture in the neighborhood's social fabric. In the weeks preceding the discovery in the vacant lot, the lives of Amor and Mila were ostensibly tied to the routines of a Cleveland winter. Their biographies are marked by the standard milestones of their respective ages, 10 and 8. These are the years of school projects, friendship circles, and the gradual acquisition of personal autonomy. However, the charges of aggravated murder against Henderson imply that during this period, the safety and security typically afforded to children of their age were being systematically compromised. The sisters' presence in the community was tied to the very location where they were found. The vacant lot near the playground was more than just a disposal site. It was a landmark in the daily lives of children in that sector of Cleveland. For Amor and Mila, the playground represented the boundary of their childhood world, a place for interaction and recreation. The tragedy lies in the fact that their final biological records are not tied to the laughter of the playground, but to the silence of the suitcases recovered just yards away. Aaliyah Henderson, at 28, was the adult figure responsible for the welfare of these sisters. The age gap between the guardian and the children, 18 years between Henderson and Amor, defines the power dynamic of the home. In this residence, the adults held absolute control over the movement, nutrition, and safety of the 10 and 8-year-old. The discovery of the third, unharmed child during the police search serves as a clinical contrast to the fate of Amor and Mila, highlighting a household that was capable of maintaining a facade of normalcy while harboring a fatal reality. The biographies of Amor Wilson and Mila Chatman are now inextricably linked to the criminal proceedings in Cuyahoga County. They are remembered as the 10-year-old and the 8-year-old who were let down by the very system of guardianship designed to protect them. Their lives, while brief, were spent in the close-knit company of one another, a sisterly alliance that ended side by side in the earth of a Cleveland lot. The entry into the home was conducted by uniformed officers and detectives as a high-priority welfare check and crime scene search. The goal was to secure the perimeter and account for all individuals listed as living at that address. Upon crossing the threshold, the investigation moved from the public tragedy of the vacant lot into the private interior of a domestic unit that had, until that morning, maintained a facade of standard urban life. The rooms were systematically cleared, and the environment was documented to preserve its state at the moment of the police intervention. It was during this methodical clearing of the residence that the investigation encountered its most significant anomaly, a detail that redefined the psychological profile of the case. In a room separated from the primary living areas, officers discovered another child. Contrary to the fatal outcome for Amor and Mila, this child was found completely unharmed. The individual was conscious, physically healthy, and displayed no immediate signs of medical distress. Child Protective Services were immediately summoned to the scene to take custody of the minor and conduct a formal evaluation of their physical and mental state. This discovery, often referred to in police reports as the surviving child, functioned as a forensic and investigative bomb. It shattered the typical expectations of a household in total collapse. In most cases involving multiple child homicides within a family, the violence is indiscriminate, reflecting a complete breakdown of the guardian's protective instincts toward all dependents. However, the presence of a healthy, thriving child in the same home where two others were allegedly murdered and discarded suggests a selective application of violence. The why of the case shifted from a general inquiry into domestic failure to a specific investigation into why Amor and Mila were targeted for aggravated murder while another child was spared. The search of the residence then transitioned into a deep-dive forensic operation. Technicians looked for points of intersection between the home and the vacant lot. They focused on the storage areas where the specific type of suitcases found in the lot might have been kept. They checked for cleaning supplies, such as bleach or industrial detergents, which might have been used to sanitize the rooms following the sisters' deaths. Every square inch of the home was mapped, from the bedrooms where the 10- and 8-year-old once slept to the kitchen and common areas. Evidence gathered during this raid included digital devices belonging to Aaliyah Henderson. These were seized to analyze her communications and search history in the days leading up to March 2nd. Investigators looked for any mention of the sisters' whereabouts, inquiries into disposal methods, or messages that betrayed a state of mind consistent with prior calculation and design. The unharmed child was also considered a potential witness, although the interviews with minors in such traumatic contexts are handled with extreme clinical sensitivity. Aaliyah Henderson was officially taken into custody at the scene. Her arrest was the result of the mounting evidence linking her directly to the suitcases found near the playground. The fact that she was the primary guardian of the victims and that a third child was found alive under her roof provided the probable cause necessary for the aggravated murder charges. The resident search confirmed that the home had been the staging ground for a crime that moved from the interior rooms to the exterior lot under the cover of the sisters' supposed disappearance. The tactical report of the raid emphasizes the orderliness of the home, which stood in sharp contrast to the grim discovery at the vacant lot. There was no outward sign of a house of horrors that the public might expect. Instead, there were the standard indicators of a family residence. This normalcy made the discovery of the surviving child even more jarring for the first responders. It indicated that the perpetrator was capable of maintaining a routine level of care for one dependent while orchestrating the cold-blooded murder and burial of two others. The bomb of the third child's survival became the centerpiece of the community's reaction. It removed the possibility that the tragedy was a result of a freak accident or a stranger abduction. The evidence gathered during the raid focused on the logistical trail, how the bodies were moved, which tools were used for the shallow graves, and where the suitcases originated. For Amor and Mila, the residence search was the final confirmation that their home was not a place of safety, but the site of their final betrayal. As the police cleared the residence and began the long process of evidence cataloging, the investigation moved into its next phase, the digital and forensic analysis that would prove the premeditation required for the aggravated murder charges. The residence had yielded its biggest secret, the survival of one child amidst the death of two others, and that fact would remain the most chilling detail of the entire Cleveland case. The transition from the physical search of the residence to the forensic analysis of electronic devices was the primary mechanism for establishing prior calculation and design. Following the arrest of 28-year-old Aaliyah Henderson on March 2, 2026, the Cleveland Police Department seized all mobile devices, tablets, and computers located within the home. In modern aggravated murder investigations, the digital footprint of the perpetrator often serves as the most reliable map of premeditation, providing a time-stamped record of the transition from domestic guardian to criminal actor. The initial phase of this digital trap involved the comprehensive extraction of data from Henderson's primary smartphone. Investigators utilized forensic software to bypass security protocols and access the device's core memory. This process allowed detectives to recover not only existing data, but also information that had been intentionally deleted. In cases involving domestic homicides, perpetrators often attempt to sanitize their digital history by removing incriminating messages or search queries, unaware that forensic tools can often reconstruct these files from the device's unallocated space. The most critical evidence retrieved during this extraction was the geolocation data. By mapping the GPS coordinates and cell tower pings associated with Henderson's phone, investigators were able to track her movements in the days and hours preceding the discovery in the vacant lot. The data provided a clear logistical trail between the residence and the burial site. Specifically, the digital records placed Henderson's device in the immediate vicinity of the vacant lot near the playground during the early morning hours, providing the physical link between the perpetrator and the disposal site. Beyond movement, the search history on the seized devices provided the evidence required for the aggravated murder charge. Aggravated murder under Ohio law requires proof of prior calculation, and the digital trap revealed a series of queries that suggested a planned event. Investigators looked for searches related to the procurement of specific suitcases, the locations of vacant lots within Cleveland, and the depth of soil required for concealment. This search history served to disprove any claim that the deaths of 10-year-old Amor Wilson and 8-year-old Mila Chatman were the result of a sudden, unplanned domestic incident. The investigation also scrutinized the household's security systems. Like many modern residences, the home was equipped with digital monitoring tools that could be accessed via mobile applications. Detectives analyzed the logs of when the home's security system was armed or disarmed and whether any cameras, either internal or external, had captured the movement of the heavy suitcases from the home to the street. In the Shaughnessy case, phone records showed a suspect accessing a security system at 5:39 a.m., providing proof of awareness of a crime in progress. For the Henderson investigation, similar timestamps provided a definitive window for when the sisters were moved. Surveillance footage from the surrounding neighborhood supplemented the digital evidence. Detectives canvassed the area for Ring doorbell cameras and commercial security systems that might have captured a figure moving toward the vacant lot. This visual evidence was cross-referenced with the GPS data from Henderson's phone to create a synchronized timeline of the disposal. The presence of a woman dragging two heavy pieces of luggage through the neighborhood under the cover of darkness became a central piece of the forensic narrative. The unharmed child's digital devices were also checked, not for evidence of complicity, but to determine the last known time Amor and Mila were active within the home. By analyzing the timestamps on gaming consoles, social media apps, and school-related tablets, investigators established the exact moment the sisters ceased their digital interactions. A simultaneous gap in phone usage or a sudden reset of settings for multiple devices often serves as a red flag for investigators, indicating a coordinated effort to hide the timing of a crime. Financial records and banking applications on the seized devices provided a secondary layer of evidence. Investigators looked for recent purchases of the specific suitcase models used to hide the remains or the acquisition of tools used for the burial. In many cases, the purchase of disposal materials days before a crime occurs is the strongest evidence of premeditation. The digital trap was designed to close every possible avenue of defense, ensuring that the prior calculation was documented through objective, electronic facts. The final component of this block involves the communication logs. Detectives examined text messages, emails, and social media direct messages for any indication of a motive or a confession. Deleted correspondence can often be recovered to show a conspiracy or a solicitation of help. For Aaliyah Henderson, the digital trap ensured that the secrets held within the walls of the residence and the dirt of the vacant lot were translated into a clinical, undeniable record of aggravated murder. The evidence gathered from her phone and the neighborhood's digital infrastructure formed a direct line from her residence to the graves of the two sisters she was supposed to protect. The investigation into the residence of 28-year-old Aaliyah Henderson revealed a domestic environment defined by a systematic, psychological divide. While 10-year-old Amor Wilson and 8-year-old Mila Chatman were subjected to aggravated murder and discarded in a vacant lot, the presence of an unharmed child in the home indicates a selective application of care and violence. This phenomenon, often identified in cases of extreme domestic neglect and abuse, suggests that the perpetrator did not suffer from a generalized breakdown of maternal or guardian instincts, but rather engaged in a targeted dehumanization of specific victims. Forensic analysis of the household dynamics in such cases frequently points to a slave dynamic, where certain children are isolated and treated as utility objects, while others are maintained in a state of relative normalcy. In documented instances of similar child neglect in 2025, victims were found to be severely emaciated, weighing only a fraction of the average for their age, while other family members lived in a state of extreme obesity. This physical disparity serves as undeniable evidence of a divided household, where resources like food, freedom, and medical care are weaponized. The logistical how of maintaining such a divide often involves the use of technology as a tool of surveillance and punishment. Investigators look for evidence of cameras installed in children's bedrooms, allowing the guardian to monitor every movement 24 hours a day. In some environments, communication between family members occurs almost exclusively via text message, even within the same house, to coordinate the abuse or humiliation of the targeted children. These messages often contain dehumanizing language, referring to the victims as idiots or slaves rather than by their names. Isolation is the primary mechanism used to facilitate the murder or severe neglect of children without alerting the community. In the months preceding the discovery on March 2, 2026, the sisters may have been withdrawn from school under the guise of homeschooling to prevent teachers or social workers from noticing physical changes or missing days. Guardians often provide fictional excuses to relatives and neighbors, claiming the children are on vacation or suffering from mysterious illnesses to explain their sudden absence from public view. This creates a vacuum of information where the perpetrator's control over the victims' lives and deaths is absolute. The contrast found in the Henderson residence, the unharmed child versus the murdered sisters, parallels cases where one child is forced to perform domestic labor, such as cooking or cleaning for the rest of the family, while being denied the very food they prepare. When victims in these environments are caught attempting to steal food from refrigerators or pantries, they are often subjected to severe physical violence or the confiscation of basic necessities like mattresses and clothing. The result is a total destruction of the child's individuality and physical health, leading to organ failure or death. For the Cleveland detectives, the why of the divide is tied to the concept of prior calculation and design. The decision to spare one child while orchestrating the deaths of Amor and Mila suggests a calculated motive. This might involve financial gain, such as the cashing in of life insurance policies, or a deep-seated resentment toward the biological parents of specific children in a blended family. In some instances, the perpetrator may even believe they are doing a favor to the victims by ending their lives to relieve them of perceived mental or physical torment. The psychological divide also manifests in the post-crime behavior of the perpetrator. In cases involving familial betrayal, the suspect often continues to live a normal life with the surviving family members, acting as if nothing has occurred while the bodies of the victims lie hidden nearby. This ability to compartmentalize the act of murder from the ongoing care of another child is a hallmark of the aggravated murder charge. It indicates a level of coldness that the legal system identifies as a primary indicator of premeditation. As the investigation into Aaliyah Henderson continues, the unharmed child serves as a critical, living piece of evidence. This child's health and well-being provide a baseline of what the household was capable of providing, making the deaths of Amor Wilson and Mila Chatman not an accident of poverty or circumstance, but a deliberate choice. The psychology of the divide proves that within the residence, there were two different worlds, one of survival for the spared and one of a house of horrors for the two sisters who ended up in the vacant lot. The legal proceedings against 28-year-old Aaliyah Henderson moved into a critical phase following the formalization of charges in the Cuyahoga County court system. Henderson was charged with multiple counts of aggravated murder in connection with the deaths of 10-year-old Amor Wilson and 8-year-old Mila Chatman. Under Ohio law, aggravated murder indicates that the state has sufficient evidence of prior calculation and design, moving the case beyond a crime of impulse into the realm of premeditated homicide. The discovery of the sisters' remains in suitcases, partially buried in a vacant lot, serves as the primary physical evidence of this calculated effort to conceal the crime. During the preliminary hearings, the focus shifted to the digital and forensic evidence recovered from Henderson's residence. Digital forensics provided a timeline of the prior calculation, including geolocation data that placed Henderson at the vacant lot during the time frame of the girl's disposal. Furthermore, the prosecution highlighted the presence of the third child found unharmed in the home during the police raid as evidence of selective and targeted violence. This child's healthy state established a baseline of care that the defendant was capable of providing, yet chose to deny to Amor and Mila. The community's demand for justice remained high as the trial dates were established in November 2025. The case has been categorized as an egregious instance of neglect and intentional harm, with the state seeking a sentence that reflects the severity of the betrayal of guardianship. While some defendants in similar high-profile cases have pleaded guilty in exchange for sentences of 35 years with the possibility of parole, the specific nature of the aggravated murder charges against Henderson leaves her facing a much longer term of incarceration. The legal process continues to document the facts of the divided household, ensuring that the evidence of the suitcases and the vacant lot remains at the center of the pursuit of justice for the sisters. The investigation into the deaths of 10-year-old Amor Wilson and 8-year-old Mila Chatman concluded with the arrest and charging of Aaliyah Henderson for aggravated murder. The evidence recovered from the vacant lot and the residence established a case of prior calculation and design. While one child remained unharmed in the home, the sisters were discarded in suitcases near a local playground. This contrast remains the central factual anomaly of the case. Justice for Amor and Mila now rests in the hands of the Ohio legal system. Like this story if you found it interesting, and subscribe to the channel. I look forward to reading your thoughts on this case in the comments below.